There is a feeling that follows certain people everywhere. It does not matter how much they accomplish. It does not matter how hard they work, how far they have come, how many things on the list are checked off. The feeling comes anyway, kitten persistent, like a hum in the background you cannot turn off. The feeling that everyone else is further ahead, that you started too late, that you are always 1 year behind where you should be by now. And if you know that feeling, if you recognized it in the first sentence of this video, then I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I am going to tell you is not motivational. It is not a reminder that you are enough or that your journey is your own. It is something more useful than that. I am going to show you exactly why the feeling of being behind is not a reflection of reality. It is a glitch, a specific, identifiable, correctable glitch in the way your brain is measuring your life, and once you see it clearly, it loses most of its power over you. Permanently. If you're new here, this channel breaks down the psychology behind why smart people feel stuck. Subscribe and hit the bell. Now let's talk about the feeling nobody talks about, honestly. The feeling of being behind is one of the most universal human experiences alive right now. It is not a new feeling. People have always compared themselves to others, always measure their progress against some imagined standard. But something about this particular moment in history has turned that feeling up to a volume that previous generations simply did not face. And the reason is not weakness or ingratitude or a lack of perspective. The reason is structural. The environment most people are living in right now has been deliberately designed to produce this feeling, at scale, on demand, in a way that is completely invisible to the people experiencing it. Let me describe something you have almost certainly experienced, probably within the last 48 hours. You pick up your phone, maybe first thing in the morning, maybe during a quiet moment in the day. You open an app, and within 60 seconds you have seen someone get promoted, someone announce a business launch, someone post about a new home, someone share a fitness transformation, someone reveal a number. Income, followers, savings, investments that is dramatically larger than yours. And something happens in your chest, not devastation. Not even sadness exactly, just a low, quiet deflation, a subtle recalibration of where you thought you were standing. A few minutes ago you felt reasonably okay about where your life was. Now, somehow, without anything in your actual life changing, you feel behind. You feel like you are not moving fast enough. You feel like everyone around you is on an escalator and you are climbing stairs. Here is what is actually happening in that moment. And I want you to understand this precisely because the precise understanding is what makes it stop working on you. Your brain, a biological instrument shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of your social standing relative to your immediate group. In every environment human beings lived in before the last 15 years or so, your immediate group was the maybe 150 people you actually knew and regularly interacted with. Your brain compared you to them. It tracked relative status, relative progress, relative position, and that comparison was useful. It helped you understand where you stood, what the social landscape looked like, what opportunities were available, what risks were present. It was a functioning, reasonably calibrated system. And then social media handed that ancient system a fire. Here is the simplest way I can describe what that actually means for your daily experience. Life does not run like a straight road. It runs like a mountain trail, uneven, non-linear, full of stretches where you are climbing hard and nothing around you seems to change, and then sudden clearings where you can see how far you have actually come. The behind feeling is what happens when your brain is deep on the trail, evaluating progress using a straight road measuring system. The instrument is wrong for the terrain, and wrong instruments produce wrong readings, consistently, regardless of how carefully you use them. Now your brain is not comparing you to the 150 people in your actual life. It is comparing you to a curated, algorithmically selected stream of the most achievement-dense moments from millions of people, filtered specifically to show you the things most likely to trigger engagement, which is almost always the things most likely to make you feel something. And what reliably makes people feel something is the gap. The gap between where you are and where someone else appears to be. The algorithm did not stumble onto this by accident. It reverse engineered the emotion and built a delivery system for it. And your brain, doing exactly what it was designed to do, is responding to that input as though it is real. Current, representative information about how you compare to the people around you. It is not. It is a feed of peak moments, stripped of all context, assembled from millions of sources, and served to you in a format that your nervous system has no evolutionary defense against. The feeling of being behind that you walk away with is not a discovery. It is a product, and you are the target market. Now, here's the part I want you to sit with, because this is where most conversations about comparison stop, and where this one's going to go further. Even if you turned off every social media app right now, even if you deleted everything and went completely offline, the feeling of being behind would not disappear, because the algorithm is just the amplifier. The antenna that receives the signal was built long before any of us had a smartphone. It was built in childhood, and for most people, it was built specifically around one question that their environment asked them over and over again in 100 different ways, usually without anyone meaning harm by it. The question was, are you performing well enough at school, at sports, at music, at friendships, at being the kind of kid that made the adults in the room feel proud? And the psychological residue of that question, the habit of scanning the environment for evidence of whether you are measuring up, that habit does not stop when you graduate. It just changes the metrics it uses. GPA becomes salary. Class rank becomes followers. Gold stars become likes. The measurement system updates. The measuring compulsion does not. This is why the people who log off social media and still feel behind are not doing something wrong. They are not failing at mindfulness or gratitude. They are carrying a measurement habit that is older and deeper than any app. The app just makes it louder, and the solution is not the same for both layers. For the algorithm layer, the solution is structural. You design your environment so you are not being constantly exposed to the manufactured comparison content. But for the deeper layer, the one that is running the measurement, regardless of what is on your screen, the solution is understanding. You have to understand what the measurement is actually tracking. Because here is the thing. The feeling of being behind requires a timeline. It requires a story about where you were supposed to be by now. And that story, that specific timeline, is almost never one you consciously chose. It is almost always one you absorbed. And absorbed timelines are worth examining very carefully. Think about the timeline you are measuring yourself against right now. And before you do, hold this thought for 1 second. Most people aren't behind in life. They're just following a map that was never drawn for them. And the worst part is most people never realize they're holding someone else's map. And that map was handed to them so early, so quietly, that they never once stopped to ask whether it was actually theirs. Now, the one that produces the behind feeling when you check in against it. Where did that timeline come from? Who built it? At what point in your life was it handed to you? Maybe it came from watching the path of your parents or older siblings, and assuming that trajectory was the template. Maybe it came from a school environment that sorted everyone into advancement tracks and left a very clear impression of what on schedule looked like and what behind looked like. Maybe it came from a cultural expectation, real or perceived, about what a person of your background, your generation, your gender, your family's ambitions was supposed to have accomplished by a certain age. Maybe it came from a moment when someone, a parent, a teacher, a coach, a person whose opinion mattered to you, expressed disappointment at your pace, and you internalized their timeline as objective truth. All of these sources have one thing in common. None of them are you. None of them were built around your specific capacities, your specific circumstances, your specific starting point, the specific obstacles you have navigated, or the specific direction your life is actually trying to go. They are external templates, and you have been measuring yourself against them as though they were custom designed for you. They were not. They were generic. And using a generic template to measure a specific life will produce inaccuracy every single time. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Nathan, because his story is so precise about this that I have thought about it many times since I first heard it. Nathan was 38. He worked in marketing. By almost any objective standard, he had built a solid life, a good career, a stable home, a close family. But Nathan had spent the better part of a decade feeling like he was running in place, like something had gone wrong in the execution of his life that he could not quite identify or fix. He was not unhappy exactly. He was just perpetually dissatisfied in a way that shadowed everything. Every accomplishment felt like it arrived too late. Every good thing felt slightly less than it should be. and in a conversation with someone who asked him a very specific question. Not what do you want, but what did you decide you were supposed to have by now? And when did you decide that Nathan went quiet for a long time? And then he said something he had never said out loud before. He said that when he was about 19 years old, he had watched his father reach a specific professional milestone at a specific age, and without ever consciously deciding it, he had adopted that age and that milestone as his personal finish line. He had been measuring every year of his life against a timeline built around someone else's career, in a different economy, in a different decade, under completely different circumstances. And every year he fell short of that external marker. The behind feeling got louder. Not because he was failing by any reasonable measure, because he was using the wrong ruler. And once he could see the ruler clearly, once he could look at it and say this was never mine to begin with, the comparison lost its authority. Not immediately. Not completely. But enough to let him start measuring his life against something that actually had his name on it. I tell you Nathan's story, not because your story is the same, but because the structure almost always is. There is a timeline. It has an origin. The origin is almost never a conscious personal decision, and the moment you can trace it back to where it actually came from, the moment it stops feeling like objective truth and starts feeling like an inherited assumption, everything shifts. The behind feeling does not disappear, but it stops being evidence. It becomes information, and information you can work with. Evidence you cannot. There is something else, Nathan said, that addresses a deeper layer. A belief about age, a deeply held, never examined conviction that life has a peak window, a period in which the important things are supposed to happen, and that, after a certain point, the window begins to close. Not dramatically, not all at once, but it closes. Every birthday felt like evidence. Every year added felt like inventory removed. Lack possibility was a finite resource, slowly being spent. This belief is more common than most admit, because admitting it feels like pessimism or self-pity. But it is there, and I want to push back on it, not with worn-out reassurances, but with reality. Research shows that late-stage achievement, late career pivots, and late blooming in creative and intellectual fields are real. Cognitive capacities improve with age. Pattern recognition, emotional regulation, tolerance for ambiguity, and judgment all strengthen. The person who starts at 40 with experience and calibrated judgment is not a discounted version of the person who started at 25. They are a different kind of starter, with different resources, and often meaningful advantages. Think of life like compound interest. Growth happens quietly for years, invisible, before results become apparent. Early years look like nothing is happening. Later years look like everything happened at once. Both impressions are wrong. The growth was always running. The window does not close. It changes shape, and at whatever age you are now, you have capabilities that an earlier version of you did not. Here's the practical shift that works. Ask, whose timeline are you on? Trace it back. Where did the idea that you should be somewhere by a certain age come from? Identifying it softens the grip. Reorient, track direction and velocity, not position. Are you moving toward something genuinely yours? Are you moving faster or slower than 6 months ago? Inventory your invisible progress. Write down 10 ways you are different from who you were 3 years ago. Skills, understanding, habits, capacities. Making them visible corrects the measurement distortion. Sometimes, the behind feeling is a signal, not a glitch. It may tell you that you are spending time on things that are not yours. The solution is to stop, reassess, and redirect, deliberately, incrementally, with intention. The behind feeling consumes real cognitive and emotional resources every day. Chronic comparison reduces the quality of life subtly, making good things slightly less enjoyable, work slightly less energizing. Recalibrating frees that energy for building the life you actually want. Carry this out. The feeling of being behind is not evidence you are behind. It is a measurement system running against a timeline that was not built for you. Producing comparisons using someone else's visible ending. The fix is recalibration. Whose timeline are you on? What direction are you actually moving? What has been compounding in you that the comparison feed cannot see? Answer these. Honestly, the behind feeling stops being a verdict and becomes a feeling one you can work with. Your younger self had a vision. They were not wrong to dream. But they could not know the path you would take, the lessons you would learn, the detours that would become the most important parts of your journey. You were never behind. You were just measuring your life with a wrong instrument. You are in the middle of the life you are actually building, and that is exactly where you need to be.